All right, welcome to the course. My name is John Elder. I'm the founder of Tkinter.com, and I'll be your instructor today. In this course, we're going to build this cool chatbot app with Tkinter and Python. So this is a desktop GUI app, and it connects to the ChatGPT artificial intelligence engine thing that's taking the world by storm. So in this course, I'll show you how to sign up with OpenAI, get an API key so that we can connect your app to the artificial intelligence engine up in the cloud. And then we're going to build out this cool app using customtkinter. Customtkinter is a specific library for Tkinter that looks a little more modern than regular Tkinter. As you can see, it's got this dark theme and it looks kind of, a little more modern and cool. And you can see we could type anything in here, click speak to chatbot, and in just a couple of seconds, boom, it will answer. We could say, given this Python code, what's wrong with it? And then type in print hello world. The code is missing quotation marks around the string hello world. The correct code should be print hello world. So all kinds of really cool things we could do with this. And we're just sort of starting to scratch the surface with what can be done with this artificial intelligence. And hopefully this course will sort of spark your interest, show you what's possible, and get you started with all this. It's really cool and it's really fun. So we're going to have this set up just like this. This is where the API will answer us. This is where we'll ask questions. We've got this little button here, boom, where we can enter in our API key. That opens and closes. It's pretty cool. We can clear the screen, and that's pretty much all there is to it. So this is not a very complicated app. We should be able to knock this out very quickly, and I think you're going to be surprised, one, just how easy it is to build out this cool looking app, and two, just how easy it is to connect to the ChatGPT API and get responses and parse them and do all this stuff. So looking forward to this course. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. If you have any questions along the way, you can go ahead and contact me at tkinter.com. I'm always available there, and drop me a quick message and I'll try and get back to you as soon as possible. So let's get started. In the next video, we're going to download and install some of the tools that we're going to need for this course. Okay, first things first, in order to do anything with Python, we have to download and install Python. Now, you probably already have Python installed on your computer, but even if you do, there's a chance you installed it incorrectly. So give me just a minute or two in this video, even if you've already got it installed, and we'll walk through this. So let's head over to our web browser. And here's the OpenAI website I've got open here. And let's go to python.org, or you can go to Google and type in Python, and then click on this download tab. And then you see I'm on Windows, so it's going to ask me to download Python 3.11.1 for Windows. Now, if this version changes by the time you watch this video, no big deal at all. Just download whatever the current version is, even if it's like a bigger version, like 4 or 5 or whatever. It's a much later version. This will still work for all the things we needed to do. So I'm going to go ahead and click this and go ahead and install this anywhere. I'm just going to install it on my desktop. Now, I'm on Firefox, so my downloads are right up here on the top right. If you're on Chrome, I think they're down in the bottom left. Whatever web browser you're using, go ahead and click that thing and then click this to open it. And here we see install Python 3.11.1. Now, I've already got Python installed, so I'm not going to go through this. But the one thing I want to show you, even if you've installed this before, you'll see right here it says add Python exe to path, and it's unchecked by default. I have no idea why they do this. Everybody's going to want this checked. So make sure you check this little box here and then click install now. Now, I'm not going to do that because I've already got Python. But even if you have Python installed, I'd suggest maybe uninstalling it and reinstalling it with this little box checked just to make sure that you have it. So next you'll click this install now. It will install it automatically, and that should be all you really need to do. You may have to restart your computer, but you probably won't even have to do that. Like I said, I've already installed this, so I'm just going to click out of here. Sure you want to cancel? Yes. Okay. And that's really all there is to it. So in the next video, we're going to download the other 2 tools that we're going to need, and then we'll get started with the course. All right, so we need 2 more tools in order to get started. We need a terminal to run our commands on, and we need something to write our code on. So the thing we're going to use to write our code with is Sublime Text. So just head over to sublimetext.com. Now, if you have some other coding editor that you like to use and you're familiar with, you can use that, but I suggest using Sublime Text because some of these other editors like Visual Studio Code or PyCharm, you might run into problems installing different libraries and things like that. And if you do, I can't really help you. So if you use the tools that I'm using, I can help you if you get into any sort of trouble. If you're using some other tool, if you don't know exactly what you're doing and run into problems, I can't help you. So just for the purposes of this course, I suggest using the tools that I'm using. They're completely free. Sublime Text, you can pay for it or not. A little box will pop up every once in a while asking, hey, would you like to pay for this? You can just click cancel, or you could choose to pay for it. It's, I don't know, $60 or something. I don't know what it is at the moment, but you can download it here for Windows, and it pops up. Go ahead and save it. I'm just going to save it to my desktop. Again, when it downloads, come here on Firefox or down in the left corner if you're on Chrome or some other web browser, and then just go ahead and click this thing right here. And this box will pop up. Go ahead and click next. Now, I'm not going to do this because I've already installed it, but it'll go through and install it on your computer, and you're good to go. And so I'm just going to go ahead and exit out of here. And that's all there is to it. Now, the other thing we need is a terminal, and I like using something called the Gitbash terminal. It's completely free, and it's very similar to a Mac terminal. So you can go to git-scm.com/download. And here it says the latest version 2.39. Whatever the latest version is, it really doesn't matter. Just go ahead and download the latest version. Same thing with Sublime Text. If it's a different version than the one I just looked at, doesn't matter at all. Just get the latest one. And here we can click download for Windows. And we want the 64-bit version. So go ahead and click right here. And again, I'm just going to save it to my desktop. And once it's downloaded, go ahead and click it to open it. And here we have this thing that pops up. Now, this is a little bit more complicated than Sublime, so I'm going to walk you through it. Go ahead and click next. Now, there are a ton of screens here, and you just want to click next for all of them. And it doesn't matter what anything says in any of these things. Don't read this. Don't try and fill any of this out. Just click next for everything. We want the defaults for it all. And the one thing that kind of gets people is, I'm still clicking. It sometimes will ask you what editor you're using to write your code. And you do not have to click Sublime in there or anything else. Just click default next and it's fine. So you finally get to this screen. You may not see this screen because I've already got Git installed, but just keep clicking next until you hit the install button here. It will go ahead and install and you're good to go. So I'm going to go ahead and cancel out of that. And that's all we need. And that's all the tools that we really need. So in the next video, we'll jump right in and start working on this thing. All right, so the next step is to set up a free account at OpenAI and get your API key. So the thing that allows your app to connect to OpenAI up in the cloud is an API key. And they use that key to keep track of who's who. So this costs money. They give you $18 worth of credits when you open your account for free. And I mean, you can do like, I don't know how many, but it's like thousands of queries for $18. So we'll be able to use that $18 for everything we need in this course and much, much more. And then it's just on a per use basis. You can choose to pay for more or not. You don't have to. So head over to openai.com/API and click sign up. Go through the process. It will ask you for your email address and a password, and then it'll have you confirm a telephone number. So you'll have to enter that in. And then after you've done that, click log in. And I'm just going to log in with my account here and click the crosswalks and then enter your password. And there you go. So then you can come up here and click this thing and click, well, for me, it says view API keys, but if you don't have one yet, I'm not quite sure if that's what it'll say, but look around there and find some link that has something to do with API keys, and then come down here and create new secret key. Now, I've already got one, so I'm not going to, but if you do, see, there it is. You can use that from now on. I'm going to go ahead and just delete that because I don't need it, but copy that key down because we're going to need it later on. So if you don't know how to do that, you can just click this little thing here. It says it's copied. Open up a notepad or something and just write it down because we're going to need that. And that's all there is to it. So now once you have that key, you have everything you need to connect to OpenAI and get started. So in the next video, we're going to start building out our app. All right, so let's start building out our app. So head over to your Windows Start menu and click it. Now it's on my other monitor, so you can't see it, but you know what a Windows Start menu looks like. And type in Sublime, and your Sublime Text 3 icon will pop up. Go ahead and click that, and this should pop up. That's good there. Next, head back over to your Windows Start menu and type in Git, G-I-T, and the Gitbash terminal icon should pop up. So go ahead and click that, and your screen should look a little something like this. Now, it'll say something else besides Codemy at Codemy right here. Whatever your Windows username is, that'll be what it is. So the first thing we need to do is create a directory to hold our app. So let's call this mkdir, stands for make directory. And then I'm in my C drive, and let's call this chatgpt. Call it anything you want, really, but chatgpt makes sense. And then we want to move into that directory. CD stands for change directory. And we just type in /c/chatgpt. And you can see now we're in this directory. Now, if we type in ls, we can see there's nothing in this directory because we haven't created anything yet. So now let's go touch and let's call our file chat.py. Call it anything you want, but we're building a chatbot. It's a Python file, so it should be chat.py. Now we can head over to our Sublime text and we can open that file. So click File, Open File, navigate to your C directory and find that ChatGPT directory, double click it, and there's our file chat.py. So if we double click this, boom, it opens up and we're good to go. So this is going to be a Tkinter app. So let's go from Tkinter, import everything. And I'm just going to go ahead and save that for now. And we'll get back to that in a second. Now head back over to our terminal and let's create a virtual environment. And the reason why we create a virtual environment is because we're going to be installing all kinds of weird things for our app. The OpenAI Python library has to be installed, and we want to install that in a virtual environment. So it's contained in its own little unit and it doesn't leak into the rest of our computer, so to speak. Also, if we create other projects in the future, we might want to use different versions of things. And so we want to be able to install those different versions of things in different virtual environments. So that's why we create a virtual environment. So let's create a virtual environment now. And to do that, we just type in Python-m venv, short for virtual environment, and then we name it. I'm just going to call it virt. Click enter. Should take a couple of seconds, and then it will spin that up. Now we can type in ls, and we can see this virt directory has been created, so we know it was successful. So now let's turn on our virtual environment. To do that, we go source, virt, scripts, activate. Now on a Mac, I believe the command is source bin activate, maybe. If not, Google how to turn on a virtual environment on a Mac. It's something like that. But if you can't figure it out, email me and I'll look it up and tell you. But I think that's what it is. So now we have our virtual environment created and we're ready to go. In the next video, we'll install the libraries that we need for this course. Okay, in this video, we're going to download and install the libraries that we need for this course. Now, we really only need a couple of libraries. We need the customtkinter library, and we also need the OpenAI library. So let's head over to our terminal. Make sure your virtual environment is turned on, and we can tell because it says virt above the command prompt there. So to install things in Python, we just go pip install and then the thing. So first, let's go customtkinter. And all right, that looks good. Finally, let's go pip install OpenAI. Now this will take a little bit longer because there's a lot of stuff here, but should take just a minute or so, maybe less, and you should be good to go. Okay, and that's all there is to it. So very quickly, let's head over to our web browser and let's go to github.com/Tom Szymanski, TSCHIMANSKY. And then come over here to customtkinter. If you're not familiar with customtkinter, this is the GitHub page for this. And you're going to want to familiarize yourself with this. I'm going to walk you through it, but if you get stuck, if you want to look something up, this is the place to do it. And if you come down here to the documentation and you click on it, you can see over here, these are all the widgets that we're going to be using. So you can see an entry box, we're going to be using that. Regular buttons. We'll be using that and a few other things. So if you're not familiar with this library, again, no big deal. I'm going to walk you through everything you need to know. But this is the library that we're going to be using to create the GUI, the wraparound GUI with our Tkinter app. So yeah, that's all there is to it. All right, so now I think we have absolutely everything we need to get started. In the next video, we'll start writing code. All right, in this video, we're going to start to build out our GUI. So first, we're going to build out the GUI, then we're going to build out the functionality. So the next few videos will just be actually creating the shell of everything. And it won't actually do anything, but we'll get everything situated and aligned how we want it and get it looking the way we want. And then we'll build in the sort of back-end functionality to connect to the API and do all the cool stuff. So up here, we started out by importing Tkinter. We also need to import customtkinter. And we can do that just by going import customtkinter. And that's all there is to that. We'll also need the OpenAI library that we installed. So let's go import OpenAI. We're also going to need to import the OS library, which is the operating system. This will allow us to open and close and save files and stuff like that. And we also need something called Pickle. This is going to allow us to save our API to our computer and retrieve that very easily. So those are pretty much the libraries and things we're going to need, and pretty simple. Next, let's create our app. So let's go root equals customtkinter.ctk. And this is how you create an instance of customtkinter. So there you go. And then let's give this a title. Let's go root.title. And I'm just going to call this chatgpt bot, something like that. And we can go root.geometry. And I want this to be 600 by 600 in pixels. And you can play around with this width and height and have it any size you want, but that's a pretty good size for me, and that works. Next, let's go root.icon bitmap. And I'm going to set this to AI_LT.ICO. And that stands for Artificial Intelligence Light.ICO. And this is just a little icon I created. And it's just the OpenAI logo, very, very small. And I'll put a link to this somewhere. Or you could just go to https://AI_LT.ICO. I'll put it there and you can just download it if you want, or you can use any icon or none at all. You don't actually need an icon, but if you want to use that, go ahead and then just save this file to the same directory where our app is here. So if we head back to the terminal and type in ls, you can see I've got that file right there in the same directory that our chat.py file is in. So, okay, that looks good. Next, we need to set the customtkinter appearance of our app. Do we want it to be dark? Do we want it to be light? What color scheme do we want to use? So to do that, let's say set color scheme. And up here, let's say initiate app, something like that. And to do that, we just go customtkinter.set_appearance_mode. And I want this to be dark mode, so it looks kind of cool and modern. We also want to go customtkinter.set_default_color_theme. And the default theme is blue. This means your buttons and widgets and things are going to be blue. I like the dark-blue theme. It's just a little bit darker blue. You could do blue, you could do dark blue, or you could do green. Blue is the default. If you want to use blue, you don't have to do this line at all. But if you want to change it, you have to do this line. Like I said, you could do dark blue, or you can do green, or you can do blue, right? So again, I want dark blue, and we're good to go there. Finally, for all Tkinter apps, we need to create a main loop. So let's go root.main loop. And there we go. So let's go ahead and save this and run it just to make sure this is looking okay. Head back over to our terminal. And let's run Python chat.py. And when we do, we get this thing that pops up. It's cool. We got the logo right there. It says ChatGPT bot. It's 600 by 600. If we click on it, we can move it around. We can expand it or that. And okay, we're good to go. So I think that's a pretty good start. In the next video, we'll start to add in the different widgets. Okay, in this video, we're going to create the text widget. Now, the text widget is the thing that ChatGPT is going to send its answers to. That's where our answers are going to be output on the screen. Now, the current version of customtkinter doesn't have a text widget, so we have to use the old regular Tkinter version and kind of spice it up to make it look modern. But in the new version that's coming out pretty soon, customtkinter will have a text widget. So you could use that if you want. Check the documentations later on, or you could just use the one that we're going to use in this video. You honestly really can't tell the difference all that much. So let's come down here and let's say add text widget to get ChatGPT responses. And I'm going to call this my_text, call it anything you want. And this is going to be a text widget. And normally this would be enough, but we want to put a scroll bar on our text widget so we can scroll if the messages get too long. So we need to put the whole thing in a frame. So create text frame. And I'm going to call this text_frame. And this is going to be a customtkinter.ctk frame. Now pay attention to the capitalization here. The C and the T are capitalized and the F is capitalized. And we want to put it in our root directory. And then let's just text_frame.pack this guy to put it on the screen. Let's give it a pad Y of 20 to push it down the screen a little bit. So, okay, we're good there. Now our text widget, we want to put it in that text_frame. And we need to change some attributes here because normally, well, actually, let's just my_text.grid this guy onto the screen. And I'll show you why we're going to grid it in just a little bit. We can grid it because it's in a frame, and that's why we're putting it in a frame, because Normally, you can only pack things in a child widget. You can't pack things and grid things. And we want to be able to pack some of the things and we want to be able to grid some of the things. So to do that, we put them in a frame that allows us to grid inside of that frame. So this grid is going to be row equals 0 and column equals 0. And that should be good for now. So let's go ahead and save this and just look and see how bad this looks. And it does look pretty bad. Let's run this. And we can see, oh yeah, it's big and white and it's stretching the whole width of this thing, and that's not great. So we need to work on this. So let's head back over here and let's change some of these attributes in our text box. So first I want to give it a background of, and I'm going to use color 343638. And if we save this and run it, we can see that's sort of a darker, it's sort of a light gray color. And I think that looks pretty good. So that looks good. Next, we want to give it a width of 65. And we want to give it a border of 1. So it has a smaller border. And we want to give it a foreground color of D6, D6, D6. And that's the text inside of it. So if we save this and run it, you can see it's already looking better. Now if we click on it and type, it's sort of a lighter gray text. That's that color we just did. Now it still has this sort of weird white border around it, so we need to change that as well. And we can do that by giving it a relief of flat. And we also want to give it a wrap of word. And this will wrap words. So when the chatbot starts typing, if a word is about to get split, it won't split the word in half and put half of the word on one line and the other half of the word on the other line. It'll wrap the entire word on another line. That's what wrap equals word will do. So that looks good. And then finally, we need to change the select background color to 1F538D. And this is a sort of blue color. And the select background, if you're not familiar, is the color of the background when we highlight text. So if we type in some stuff and then if I drag and drop, you can see it's sort of blue. That's the select color, that blue color. So, okay, looking good. You'll notice that border that was along the edges is gone now. And even though we're using the old Tkinter text widget, I think this looks pretty good. It looks pretty modern. In the next video, we'll add the scroll bar so that we can actually scroll this thing if the AI responds with a lot of text and we need to scroll. So we'll look at that in the next video. Okay, in this video, we're going to add the scroll bar to our text widget. So in the last video, we added the text widget. Now let's create scroll bar for text widget. So I'm going to call this text underscore scroll. And this is going to be a custom tkinter.ctk. Again, notice the capitalization, scroll bar. And where do we want to put this? We want to put this in our text frame that we created in the last video. And we want to give it a command of my underscore text dot y view. So this will sort of associate it with our text box right there. Then we need to put this whole thing on the screen. So let's go text underscore scroll dot grid and give it a row of 0 and a column of 1, because up here we have the column of 0, so we want it right next to it. So that's column 1. And we also want to give this a sticky of north-south, so it stretches the whole length of the frame, right? Okay, so now let's add the scroll bar to the text box. So to do that, we just call my underscore text dot configure, and we give this a y scroll command of text underscore scroll dot set. So that will take our scroll bar, which is this thing, and set it into our my text configure. Now I'm going through all this stuff very quickly. I sort of assume you have a basic understanding of Tkinter. If you don't, head over to my website, tkinter.com. I've got a ton of courses on all the basic stuff of Tkinter, hundreds of videos. You can check that out. If you need a sort of refresher course or any sort of things like that, go ahead and check that out. So let's go ahead and save this and run this just to make sure this is working correctly, because we kind of went through that a little fast. And oh, NS is not defined. We need quotation marks. Yeah, I knew we did that a little too fast. Right here, we need quotation marks. There we go. All right, so let's save this, run it again. That's why we run these things like this multiple times to catch our mistakes. All right. So now you see we've got this scroll bar, sort of highlights if we hover over it, and we can test this thing out. Let's just put a bunch of stuff on the screen here, and now we can see our scroll bar is moving down, and we can grab it and click and move and scroll, and all right, looking pretty good. So we are moving right along. In the next video, we'll start to add the buttons underneath. Okay, so we've got our text box. Now we need to put a little entry box and some buttons underneath that. So I think in this video, we're just going to look at the entry box. So here, let's say entry widget to type stuff to ChatGPT. So I'm going to call this chat_entry because we're going to be chatting here. Whatever, call it anything you want. And let's move this up a bit. And this is going to be a custom tkinter.ctk entry widget. And we want to put this in root. And we've got a bunch of stuff here. We want first some placeholder text. So we can type in placeholder underscore text. And we can set that equal to type something to ChatGPT. Whatever. There you go. And then let's give this a width of 535. Let's give it a height of 50. And let's give this a border underscore width of 1. So by default, the customtkinter entry boxes have a border width of 2. And to me, that looks a little bit chunky. We can play around with it and see, but really do anything you want with it. It really doesn't matter. So now let's go chat_entry.pack. And let's give this a pad Y of 10 to push it down from our text box just a little bit. So let's go ahead and save this. Head over to our terminal, run this guy again. And all right, looks pretty good. You see we've got our placeholder text here. It says type something to ChatGPT. If we click this, that disappears and we can type stuff. If we take the focus away, that placeholder text comes back. And you'll notice the border here, it's very slim. I think that looks good. Like I said, if we come back over here very quickly and just leave it at the default, which is 2, run this guy again. Maybe you like that, maybe you don't. For me, I like more streamlined, so I'm going to change that back to 1. And yeah, that's all there is to it. So that was pretty simple. In the next video, we'll add the buttons. Okay, in this video, we're going to add the buttons. Now we need 3 basic buttons here. We need a button to submit whatever we type to ChatGPT. We need a button to clear all the screens if we want to clear the screens. And we need a button to open the API screen so that we can enter in our API code or update it or do anything we need to do there. So 3 basic buttons, super simple. Let's come down here and let's create buttons. Now first, let's create button frame. And the reason why we're doing this is because we've been packing stuff up until now, and I want to put the buttons in a row. And to put the buttons in a row, the easiest way to do that is to use the grid system. So in order to use the grid system, again, like we did earlier, we need to put them in a frame. And then inside that frame, we can use the grid. So let's call this button_frame. And again, that's going to be a custom tkinter.ctk frame. And we want to put it in a root. And let's change the foreground color of this frame because out of the box, it looks blackish. And I don't want it to be black. I want it to be the same color as our background, which I believe is 242424. So that looks good. Now let's button_frame.pack this guy, put it onto the screen, and let's give this a pad Y of 10 to push it down from our entry box a little bit. Okay, so now we've got that, we can add our buttons. So we have 3 basic buttons. The first one I'm going to call submit_button. And that's going to be a customtkinter.ctk button. And we want to put it in this button frame. And the text is going to be something like speak to ChatGPT, something like that. And let's give this a command of speak. Now, commands are what will happen whenever we click the button, and we don't have this yet. So let's come up here to the top of our app and submit to ChatGPT. Let's define speak. And for now, I just want to pass. While we're at it, let's clear the screens. So let's define clear. And again, we want to pass. And then let's also do API stuff. So let's define, let's just call it key. And let's pass for now. Okay, so these are the 3 functions for our 3 buttons. Now let's finish building out our buttons. So let's go submit underscore button dot grid. And we want to put this in row equals 0, column equals 0. And let's give this a pad X of 25 because we want to really space these buttons apart, and you'll see why in just a second. Now I'm going to grab this and I'm going to paste it in 2 more times. And let's just sort of make this easier by just changing the names of this. So this is going to be the clear button. And here we'll have it say clear screen or clear response, something like that. And we'll give it a command of clear. And for this pad X, I'm going to give it 35. I want to have it, the one in the middle, have a little bit more padding in it. And finally, we can call this guy the API button. And here, let's say update API key. And we want to have it call our key. Okay, so let's actually comment this a little better. Create submit button. Copy this. Create clear button. And create API button. Probably don't really need to do that, but I like to over comment when possible. So let's head back over to our terminal, run this guy, see if we messed that up. Oh, we definitely did. They're all in one spot. We forgot to change the columns. So that's the problem with copying and pasting. Here's column 0. This needs to be column 1, and this needs to be column 2. All right, go ahead and save this, run it. That should do the trick. Oh yeah, sure enough, there we go. We've got each of these buttons looking good. They're nicely spaced out. And you notice they're sort of dark blue. We can change that if we want by changing this here at the very top, this dark blue theme. We can change that to green, for instance. There's only 3, blue, dark blue, and green. So maybe as this thing becomes a little more mature, they'll add other color schemes. But if you like that better, go crazy. You know, whatever you like. I like the dark blue. It's just me. So I'm going to change that back to dark blue. Save it, and we're moving right along. So that's all for this video. In the next video, we'll start to add the API key stuff below our buttons. Okay, in this video, we want to start to add the API stuff. So we want to be able to click that button and have a thing open up to where we can enter our API key and save it or modify it or whatever. So we need to add that in this video. So again, we're going to start out with a frame, and I'm going to call this API underscore frame. And this is going to be a customtkinter.ctk frame again. And we want to put it in root. And let's give this a border underscore width of 1. I actually want an outline around this because we're going to make it appear and disappear. So I want it to be kind of contained in a little thing that we can actually see. So let's go API underscore frame dot back and give this a pad Y of like 10 or something for now. Now we're going to change that in a bit because we're going to hide this thing. So we'll worry about all that later. So now let's add API entry widget. So the thing where we can actually type in our API key. So I'm going to call this API underscore entry. And this is going to be a customtkinter.ctk entry. And I want to put it in that API frame. And let's give this some placeholder text. And let's have that say enter your API key. That looks good. And let's give this a width of like 350. Now I already went ahead and played around with these, so I know the numbers that I want, but you could play around with them and make it any size you want and all that good stuff. We also want to give it a height of 50 and a border underscore width of 1. All right, that looks pretty good. Now let's go API underscore entry dot grid. And let's give this a row equals 0, a column equals 0, a pad X equals 20, and a pad Y equal 20. So that will position it where pretty much where I want it. Now, finally, let's add API button. Now this button is going to save our API key. So I'm going to call it API save underscore button. I don't know, very original. And this is going to be a customtkinter.ctk button. Again, we want to put it in API frame. And let's give it a text of save key. Probably don't need an exclamation point there. I get excited. And let's give this a command of save underscore key, which will create this guy in just a second. And that's all we need there. And finally, let's API underscore save underscore button dot grid this guy and give it a row equals 0 and a column equals 1, because here we gave it a column of 0, so the next one over is 1. And we also want to give this some padding, so let's call pad x of, say, 10 or so. Okay, so now we need to create this function real quick. So back up to the top of our app. And let's say save the API key. And we want to define save key. And we want to pass for now. Okay, so let's save this and run it. See how that looks. See if we messed it up. It doesn't really fit though, so we need to make our app a little bigger. So head back over here, come up to the top, and let's make this like 750. And we'll change this in a bit and you'll see why, but let's go ahead and save this and run it. And that looks pretty good. Now this is really kind of scrunched together. Let's kind of play around with that a little bit. Come back down here to the bottom, and instead of giving this whole frame a pad y of 10, let's give it a pad y of 30. Save it. Run it. All right, that's looking a little bit better. Now in the future, this button will toggle this open and closed, and it'll disappear, and it'll change the size of our app to where it's like this big. And then we'll click this button and the whole thing will jump up like this. But we'll do that probably in the next video or two. So that's all for this video. So yeah, let's get to it. Okay, in this video, I want to play around with these two things right here, this save API section and this update API key. By default, when the app opens, I want this to be sort of closed. And when we click this, I want the whole thing to kind of pop open like that. So that's what we're going to work on in this video. Now, this is actually very simple. First, head back over to our code. You'll notice our 3 buttons that we created. This is the API button, and it calls this key function. So up here in this key function, we can play around. The first thing I want to do is change the root.geometry of our app to 600 by 750. And you're going, oh, wait a second, it already is that. Actually, now I'm going to come up here, and by default, I'm going to change this to 600 by 600. So just by clicking this button, we're going to change that. And then when we click the Save API Key button, we'll change this back to 600 by 600. So that alone might do it, but we're going to play around with it even more. But let's just run this and see. So we can see right off the bat, it's been resized. Now, if we click this, boom, it opens. If we click this, boom, it closes again. Now, we can go like this and drag this down and it's still there. And I don't love that. So let's fix that. What we can actually do is come back over to our code. And when we click this Save Key button, we can also, remember, if we come down here, this whole frame is called the API frame. And it has our entry widget with our key, and it has that button. And they're both sitting in this frame, so we can hide that frame and everything inside of it just by calling API frame dot pack underscore forget. Right? Very cool. Likewise, we can make it appear again by calling API underscore frame dot pack. And again, we want to give this a pad y of 30 to really kind of push it down the screen from the buttons. So let's do some comments here. Resize app. And here, let's say reshow API frame. And here, let's go hide API frame. And resize app smaller. Here we can say resize app larger, I guess. There we go. So let's save this and run it. So now when we click this button, boom, it appears. We click the save key, boom, it disappears. Now if we grab this and drop it down, it's hidden. It's not actually there, but we can still toggle it back and forth. Very cool. So that's all for this video. In the next video, we'll start to play around with saving our key and creating the mechanism to actually do that. And that'll be in the next video. Okay, in this video, we want to start to work on this API section right here. So we want to be able to enter our key, click this, and then have it saved. Now it looks like it's being saved here, but it's not. If we close this and run it again, we see that it's definitely not being saved. So we're going to use something called Pickle for this, and Pickle will take text and change it into sort of binary byte code, right? And the reason why I'm going to do that is because, one, with Pickle, it's really easy to open and close files. It takes care of all that stuff for us. But also, I don't want my API key to be just like visible in a text file. And it's probably paranoia because this is a desktop software. It's only ever going to be on my computer. These files aren't going to be on the internet. So nobody's going to be able to just see it unless they hack my computer. And even that's not a huge deal if somebody finds my API key. But still, we don't want to make it super easy. So changing this to bytecode will stop your casual, bad person from swiping this easily. Now, this is not encryption or anything like that. This is just sort of a basic little thing that we can sort of camouflage our API key a little bit. So let's get into this. Let's head back over to our code. And we've already got the code to show our API frame and then to hide our API frame. Now we just need to kind of modify it a little bit. So I'm going to come over here to our key section. And this function gets called whenever we click that third button, the API button. It calls this key function. Let's come back here and let's first define our file name. So I'm going to create a variable called file name. And I'm going to set that equal to API_key. Now this is going to be the name of the file that we created. It's going to be called API_key. Now there's no like .text at the end of this or .dat or .bat or anything like that. It's just API key, right? So first, let's run some logic to see, hey, does this file exist yet? Because the first time we run our program, this file won't exist. So we can check to see that by calling the os.path.isFile function and just pass in that file name. Right? Now I should mention both OS and Pickle we imported at the top of our app here way back at the beginning of this course. So that's where these guys are coming from. So if that file name exists, what do we want to do? Well, we want to open the file. And to do that, let's create a variable. I'm going to call it input file. Call it anything you want. And we want to open. And what do we want to open? Well, we want to open this file name. So we can pop that in there. And we want to open in the mode of RB. And RB allows us to just read the file name. And the reason why we want to read it, because we want to say, hey, if it exists, let's open it, read it, get whatever's in there, and put it up on the screen. So that will do that. So that will open it. Now let's load the data from the file into a variable. Once it's a variable, we can do stuff with it. So I'm just going to call this stuff, and we're going to go pickle.load. And then what do we want to load? We want to load that input_file, which is this guy that we just opened, right? So we're saying, hey, open it and then take whatever's in there and pickle it into this variable. And by pickle, it's sort of like unbytifies it. It changes it back into a regular text. And you'll see what that means in just a second. Finally, we want to output stuff to our entry box. So let's call API_entry.insert. We want to insert it at the end of the box. And what do we want to insert? That stuff. And you'll remember this API entry is way down here. That's that entry box where it says type in your API key. Right? So, okay, that will do that if it exists. Else, if the file doesn't exist, we need to create it. So let's create the file. So we can do the exact same thing here. Let me copy this, but instead of RB, we'll use WB. And R stands for read, W stands for write. And with WB, if you're going to open a file to write to it and that file doesn't exist, Python will create it automatically. That's one of the things that WB does, right? So this will create the file for us. Then we can just close the file again because we don't want to do anything with it just yet. And to do that, we could just call input_file.close. And that's it. So now, remember we finagled the dimensions of our app. I'm going to take that away and bring that and paste it in down here because we don't want to do all that until after all of this is done. So, okay, that should do the trick. So I think that's all for this video. In the next video, we're going to look at saving our key. Okay, in this video, we're going to look at saving our key. Now, whenever we paste in our API key into that little box and click save, we need to save. And to do that, we'll come down here to our save section. And again, I'm going to do this down here. So again, we want to define our file name. And I'm going to call this file name again. And I'm going to set it equal to API_key because we know that's the name of our file. Now we need to open that file again. And I'm going to call this output_file because we're writing to it and outputting something into it. And again, we just call open the name of our file, which is file name. And again, we're going to WB because we're going to write to this, right? W stands for write. Now we need to actually add the data to the file. And we use pickle for that. We're going to dump it into the file. So we call pickle.dump, right? And then what do we want to stick in there? Well, whatever's in API_entry. That's our entry box that has our API key. So to get whatever's in there, we call .get with 2 parentheses. And where are we going to stick it? We're going to stick it in that output file that we just opened right here, right? So we're going to dump everything that's in our entry box into our file. And that's it. So then we can go ahead and do our stuff here and we should be good to go. Now we could close this file, I guess, if we wanted to, or we could just leave it open. It will close on its own whenever your program ends. So that works too. So let's head over here. And first this ls, we see we don't have our API key file. So now let's run this guy. And we can click this. And I'm just going to type in John Elder for now. We can save it. So now when we ls, we see that key thing exists. Now if we run our app again, boom, John Elder is sitting right there. Now if we click save again and open again, you can see that it's adding it a second time, which is not what we want. So we'll have to fix that in just a second. But yeah, we're coming right along. Now, if we come back over here and open that API key file, you can see this is what's in it. This is what I mean by byte files, by bytecode, right? It's just weird numbers and stuff. So to the casual intruder who might be trying to steal your key, they're not going to know what this is. They're not going to be able to figure it out. Now, if they're an experienced hacker and they go, that looks like bytecode, I can decode that, then yes, they can decode this. So this is not encryption, right? This is just very basic stuff. But it works okay. So now when we come down to save our key here, let's delete. Let's go API_entry.delete. We want to delete everything from 0 to the end. Let's delete entry box. Right? And the reason why we're doing this is so that we don't get that thing that we just saw. So let's come back over here and I'm going to remove our API key. See, now it no longer exists. And let's try this whole thing again. So we can say update our key. I'm going to type in John Elder, save it. Now when I update it again, boom, it just says John Elder once. I can save it because every time we save it, it takes away whatever was there. And so then the next time when we open it, it's not overriding itself onto itself, right? So now we can close this. Let's run it again just to make sure this is working again. And boom, John Elder's still there. We can save it. All right, we're good to go. So that's all for this video. In the next video, we're going to do just a little bit of error handling. Okay, in the last video, we worked on saving our key. In this video, I want to do just a little bit of error handling here because chances are nothing's going to go wrong when this happens, but maybe something could go wrong if the file is corrupted, if there's some weird operating system glitch that just the right time. I don't know. It's probably not ever going to happen, but it might. So let's build in a little bit of error handling in here just in case. And to do that, we're just going to do a try except block, right? So let's come to our save key. Well, actually, let's start with our key section here. And here, I'm just going to create a try block. And we can do that just by try. And try blocks look just like logic blocks, right? And let me just tab over everything. So now it's going to try this. And let's go accept exception as E, right? And then in my_text, let's dot insert at the end of it. And let's put a couple of line breaks and say there was an error. And let's put another couple of line breaks. And then let's put E. Now we need to make an F string out of this. So let's put an F in front of that. That will allow us to do this variable, which is this variable. And that looks good. So now if we try to open this thing or read this thing and there's some sort of error, that error will get passed in as E. And then it will pop this up on the text box at the top of our file. And it'll say, hey, there was a problem. And this E will say what the actual problem was. So I'm just going to go ahead and copy all of this. And we're going to do the same thing down here. So start out by going try. And then I'm going to take all of this stuff and tab it over. That looks good. And then tab this over. Okay. And there we go. Again, this is silly. This is really probably not necessary, but we'll build a little bit of error handling in here just in case. Anytime we try and open or close a file, there's things that could go wrong. So if those things go wrong, hopefully this will catch those errors and won't let the program crash. Instead, it'll just flash a little message up on our screen and says, hey, there's an error. Here's what it is, whatever. And we're good to go. So that's all for this video. In the next video, we'll start to look at querying the ChatGPT engine. Okay, I know I just said in the last video that in this video, we're going to start looking at querying the ChatGPT AI engine. But before we do that, I just noticed we come down here, we have this clear button and this clear function, and we haven't done that one yet. And this will just take us like 30 seconds. So that's what we're going to do in this video. So we've got this button, clear button, and it says clear response. And we want it to clear all of the screens whenever we click it. So let's come up here. Like I said, this is just going to take like 30 seconds. And right here, we need to clear a couple of screens. So the first one is, let's clear the main text box. And that's where ChatGPT is going to output its responses, right? You might want to clear that screen for some reason. And that's what we're going to do here. So that was my_text. And we want to .delete. And we want to delete everything in the text box. So that is 1.0 to end. And 1.0 is the first position in the text box. Tkinter just calls it 1.0. So we're saying, hey, take everything from 1.0, the very top left-hand corner of the box, all the way to the end of the box and delete it. So that will work for that. We also want to clear the query entry box or entry widget, whatever you want to call it. And we call that, come down here, chat entry. All right, so let's come back up here. And we just go chat entry.delete. And now entry boxes are different than the text box. Entry boxes start at 0 instead of 1.0. I don't know why, right? And then we want to delete everything from 0, which is the far left of our entry box, all the way to the end, which is end. And that should work. So let's go ahead and save this and run it just to make sure this is working. But it absolutely should be. So let's type some stuff here and some stuff here. Clear the response, boom, done. Now we could have it clear the entry box this as well, but I don't think we want to do that because that's going to have our API key and we don't want to just like delete that, arbitrarily. So we'll just have it do this box and we're good to go. So, okay, we are moving right along. The only thing left to do is to speak to ChatGPT right here. So we'll start to look at that in the next video. And I promise this time we'll actually do that in the next video. Okay, in this video, we're going to start to talk to ChatGPT. So if we come down here and we see we've got our submit button and it says speak to ChatGPT. And whenever we click that button, it runs this speak function, which is all the way up here at the top. And so this is what we're going to be working on here. So first we need to say, hey, did we type anything to chat, right? So let's go if chat underscore entry dot get, right? And we can do something else. Let's flash up a message onto the screen. So let's go my underscore text dot insert at the end of it. Let's put a couple of line breaks in case there's stuff on that screen already. And let's say, hey, you forgot to type anything, right? And we actually have to pass here first. So, okay, let's go ahead and save this and run it. See if that worked. So we didn't type anything. We click this. Hey, you forgot to type anything. So if we click something this time, doesn't do anything. We clear this and do it. Hey, you forgot to type anything. Okay, so far so good. So inside of here, we need to first make sure that we have an API key, right? So I'm just going to come down here and grab all of this and paste it in. And the indentation is all messed up here. So I'm going to copy all this and tab it over. There we go. So here, again, it's going to look up and say, hey, does the file name exist? If it doesn't, it's going to create that file for us. If it does, it's going to grab this and output it onto that screen there. But we don't really need it to output it onto the screen. What we really need to do is query ChatGPT, right? And down here, if it doesn't exist, we need to put up a little message that says, hey, you need a key. So let's say error message, you need an API key, right? So let's go my underscore text dot insert. We want to insert on the end. And again, let's put a couple of line breaks in case there are things in that screen already. And let's say you need an API key to talk with ChatGPT. Let's put another line, or let's say get one here. And let's put another line break. And I'm just going to paste in this URL, which is https://beta.openai.com/account/API keys. So, okay, that looks good. Now let's come up here and let's say my underscore text dot insert. We want to insert it at the end. And let's say working. Now we're going to get rid of this line in a second here, but I just want to put it in there so we can test it out to make sure this logic is all working. So let's go ahead and save this and try it out and see. Let's head back over here. And we do have a key. So if we try to say something, hey, you forgot to say anything. Let's clear that again. Let's go hello. Let's speak. And it says working. We're good to go. Now if we get rid of that, clear everything, and try to say something again, it still says working. We got to save our key. Now we try it again. Let's clear the screen. We say something. It still says working. So something's going on there. Let's test here. Let's come back here and remove our API underscore key. Now let's run this guy again and try it again. And there we go. You need an API key to talk with ChatGPT. Get one here. And we're good to go. Okay. So now we got an error. Something happened. We ran out of input. See, I was going on about error handling with opening and closing files. And, we're not going to never need that error handling. And turns out we do. So I'm going to enter my key. Save it. Okay, that seems to work now. Let's open it again. To make sure, yep, okay, that's still in there. So now I'm going to really quickly here add in my actual API key so that we can actually use this thing and play around with it. Let me see here. I'm going to go ahead and pause it so you can't see. All right, we are moving right along. So in the next video, we'll go ahead and query ChatGPT. Okay, we've got everything in place. Now we just need to actually query ChatGPT. So we had this in the last video that says working just so we could test it out. I'm going to go ahead and get rid of that. Now, how do we actually query ChatGPT? Well, it's actually very easy. The first thing we need to do is define our API key to ChatGPT. And to do that, we call a variable OpenAI .api_key, and then we just pass in stuff. Now, why stuff? Because right here, we open the file that has our API key in it, and then we loaded it into this variable we called stuff. So now we need to just take that variable and say, hey, send it over to OpenAI. Now we can call OpenAI.API key because OpenAI, we imported right up here at the top, right? So that's the OpenAI library that we pip installed way back at the beginning of this course. So, okay, that will define our key. So now we need to create an instance. And to do that, we just go OpenAI.model.list and then define our, let's say, query or response, something like that. And to do that, I'm going to create a variable called response. But this is going to be an OpenAI.completion. And that's what they call it whenever you send a query and get a result. It's a completion. So OpenAI.completion, and we want to create it. And here we need a bunch of stuff. So first we need the model that we want to use. And there's several different models you can use. The best one, I think, is text-davinci-003, right? And then the prompt, this is the thing we want to say. This is like, what question are we asking? What data are we sending over there? What are we saying? And that's just chat_entry.get, right? Because that's the box we're typing into, our prompt box, basically. All right, so there we go. And now temperature, I'm going to set that equal to 0. 0 is sort of like the default. And if you want to get, let's say, more specific data, you would raise the temperature to 1 or 2 or something like that. Just by default, we're going to leave it at 0. Now, you could play around with this to where you could add another box that pops up where you could type in the temperature you want to use. But for now, we're just going to set the temperature at 0. And now we're going to set max_tokens to 60. And a token is sort of text that gets returned. So then we're going to go top_p and set that equal to 1.0. And then we're going to send a frequency_penalty to 0.0. And then we're going to set a presence_penalty to also 0.0. And I got these things, all of this stuff, straight out of the OpenAI documentation. This is just what they suggest you do. So that's what we're going to do. And okay, that's really all there is to it. So now we can come down here and let's my_text.insert at the end. Now you have a choice to make here. You can have it put it at the end of whatever's already in the text box, or you could delete whatever's in the text box and always have the very first thing returned, whatever ChatGPT is returning, right? I like to do it like this, just put it at the end, because you're going to have a conversation with this thing, and you might want what it said earlier to still be on the screen so you can read it and it makes sense. So that's just up to you. We're going to do it like this. And for now, let's just put the response. Now, let's also go my_text.insert at the end. Let's put just a couple of line breaks. So there's some space between each time the ChatGPT answers you. There's some space between each thing. So, okay, that looks good. Oh, right here, presence. I misspelled. It should be presence with a C. Okay, and that looks good. So let's go ahead and save this. Now, this isn't going to get the job done. It's going to send a weird response that we're going to see in a second that we're going to need to parse. But for now, we can just sort of see if this works. So let's head back over here and let's run our app. And let's just say hello. Speak to ChatGPT. and boom, it returns this. Now, you'll see this is all kinds of stuff, and we need to parse this further. This video is getting a little bit long, so I think we'll do that in the next video. Okay, so we've queried ChatGPT and we got a response. And you can see it's kind of weird, right? So what is this? This is a Python dictionary, and inside of it, it has at least one Python list, right? So it's a Python list inside of a Python dictionary. So to get through this, we need to parse it. And you can see there's some stuff in here, choices, finish reason, stop, index 0, log probs, null, text, hi there, how can I help you? Hey, look at that. That's the response of ChatGPT. It's this thing right here. And you'll notice there's a couple of line breaks that it also returns. So we're going to have to strip those out. But whatever, we can do that. And we have this created thing. Here's an ID we don't really care about. There's the model. We already know the model. The object is text completion. We already knew that because, we're doing a completion thing there, right? Usage, completion tokens 11, prompt tokens 1, total tokens 12. Okay, so we don't care about any of this stuff except this text. So we need to query choices, and then the inside of here, the 0th item of this list, and then parse again text. So how can we do that? Well, super simple. Just use some basic Python here. And to do that, we call choices. Because, let me pull this back up. That's the first thing in our dictionary here, right? But then there's a list inside of it. So we want the first item in the list, which is a 0 in Python land, right? The first thing of any Python list is the 0th item, right? And then inside the 0th item, we want the text, right? And that should do the trick. Now I'm going to wrap all of this in parentheses because we also need to get rid of those line breaks, those two ends. Remember right here, these two ends, those are line breaks. That will put 2 spaces. Now you might want to keep those 2 spaces, but we've already put in spaces ourselves right here, right? So I want to .strip those characters out, and we can use the function .strip. It's a Python function that will strip out any before or after line breaks that get returned. So, okay, let's go ahead and save that and run it, and I think that just might be it. Fingers crossed. So let's close this guy, clear our screen just for good luck, run it again, and let's say, hi there, exclamation point. Click the button. How can I help you? How are you feeling today? I'm feeling good today. It's not being very chatty. What are you up to? Right now, I'm just relaxing and catching up on some reading. That's weird. What is the square root of 100? Square root of 100 is 10. Yeah. Given this Python code, why is it wrong? Print hello world. This code is wrong because it is missing quotation marks around the string hello world. The correct code would be print hello world. That is correct. All right, I think we're done. So that was a lot of buildup to not much code, right? To actually query this thing, all we needed was our API key, this line of code to create an instance, right? This stuff to send our query, and then paste our response onto the screen. That's all there is to it. It's a lot of buildup and a lot of work to build out the GUI of this thing, and then not a whole lot of actual code needed to query the OpenAI ChatGPT engine, which is actually kind of cool. The easier this thing is to work with, I think, the more accessible it's going to be for everybody. And very, very cool. So that's all for this video. In the next video, we'll push our code up to GitHub. Okay, in this video, we want to start to push our code up to GitHub. Now, GitHub is a place where you keep all your code. If you're familiar with it, great. If you're not, it's just a place where coders store their code repositories. In case your house burns down, in case your computer blows up, you always want to have your code somewhere else. And also, this will allow me to upload my code and you guys to look at it if you have questions or if you want to copy it or review it or anything like that. So the first thing we need to do is create an SSH key. The SSH key is a security key that will allow our computer to connect to github.com securely. So we do that in the terminal. So let's head back over to our terminal. Still got this running. I'll go ahead and close it. And we don't need our virtual environment turned on, so I'm going to deactivate it. There you go. And now we want to cd // and this will just go to our main directory. We could see mine is C users codemy. That looks good. So now you need to make a directory to hold your SSH key. So let's go mkdir.ssh. Now I've already got that, so I'm not going to hit enter, but you'll hit enter and it'll create that directory. Now we need to move into that directory. So cd change directory .ssh, and we can see there we are. Now we need to create an SSH key. And to do that, we just go ssh-keygen.exe. And it's generating a public-private RSA key pair. It's saying, where do you want to save it? Just hit enter to save it in this directory. And it's saying, hey, you've already got one. Do you want to override it? I'm going to say yes. You won't have this option because you're doing this the first time. So now it's going to ask for a passphrase. I never enter a passphrase. I don't need a password for my SSH key. There's no point in it. So I'm just going to hit enter, hit it again, and then we're good to go. So now if we type ls, we can see there's these three files: known host, RSA, id_rsa.pub, and id_rsa. This .pub is the one we want. That's our public SSH key. We're going to upload that to GitHub. So let me just clear the screen here and do this again. So to get that, we just type CAT, short for catalog, and then go id_rsa.pub. And this is our SSH key. So you just want to highlight this whole thing and then right click and copy. And then we're going to send that over to GitHub. And I think we'll do that in the next video. Okay, in the last video, we created this SSH key. In this video, we need to upload it to GitHub. So head over to your web browser and head over to github.com. Now, if you don't have an account, go ahead and sign up. It's totally free. I'm going to go ahead and sign in. And there we go. So this is my GitHub account, github/flatplanet. No, I do not think the world is flat. I just find it hilarious that some people do. So that's my username. And if you want to come over here, you'll see a button that says follow. If you want to follow me, that'd be cool. I can see, oh, I've got almost 2,000 followers. Who knew? But anyway, what we need to do is add our SSH key to our GitHub account. So I'm going to come over here and click on settings down here at the bottom. I clicked on my little icon here, click on settings, and then come down here and SSH and GPG keys. We want to add a new SSH key. So we don't need a title. You can leave that blank. And here we just need to right click and paste in that key that we copied in the last video right here from our terminal. So you can see it starts with SSH-RSA and it ends in codemy at codemy. So we can kind of spot check it just to make sure we've got the right one here, SSH-RSA, and it ends in codemy. All right, we're good to go. So now we can add this SSH key, and that's all there is to it. Now we're authenticated, or at least we will be the first time we try and connect our computer to GitHub. So super short video, but that's all there is to this. In the next video, we'll go ahead and set up a Git repository and push our code up to GitHub. Okay, so we've created our SSH key. We've uploaded it to GitHub. And we can come back to our main profile here. In this video, we want to set up Git on our local computer, create a Git repository, and then push that repository up to our GitHub account. So to do that, we head back over to our terminal. Now we're in this SSH directory. We need to change directory back into our chatgpy directory. And we can see, yep, there's all of our stuff. And now our virtual environment was turned off in the last video. We need to turn it back on. So let's go source virt /scripts/activate. And you can see now this little vert guy is on top of our prompt here. So that means that our virtual environment has been turned on. So now there's several commands we have to enter in order to create a Git repository. Now Git comes with the Gitbash terminal. It's one of the reasons why we use it. And there's nothing we need to install, but we need to set it up the first time. So head over to your web browser and go to codemy.com/git. That's Git. And these are the commands we need to enter. I have been using this for like 20 years. I never remember them. I just go to this page and copy and paste these because I just don't remember them on my own. So the first one is this, and then your name. So I just copy that, right click and paste, and then type in your name. There we go. One down. The next one is your email address. Use your actual email address because I think GitHub uses that to connect things, maybe. So I'm going to go johne4196@gmail.com. Okay. Now the rest of these are just straight up copy and paste. So we just grab this guy, paste him in. Then we grab this guy, paste him in. And then finally, the last one I do remember is git init. Init is short for initialize. So we just paste him in. Okay, now you'll notice it says master now, and it didn't before. That's the master repository, and we're going to be changing that to main in a minute because GitHub now requires it to be called main instead of master. And the reason why is because in computer programming, there are masters and slaves. There are slave processes. They're slaves to their master process, I guess. And in today's woke society, we can't have masters and slaves, so we now call it main instead of master. And that's actually why we do that. Whatever. A little history for you. So now we've sort of installed Git. We need to initialize it. So we type in git add period. This will add all the files in our directory, including our virtual environment. So there's a bunch of them. Okay. Then we need to type git commit -am and give a little message. And this is just going to be our initial commit. And that will commit all of those files into our repository, right? So now we need to head over to GitHub and create a repository. So head back over to your profile and come up here to repositories and click on that. You can see I've got 80 of them. And we just need to create a new one. And I'm going to call this ChatGPT bot, something like that. And you can be either public or private. They're both free. I always keep all my stuff public, especially because I want my students to be able to read my code. If you are doing some top secret project and you don't want the world to see it, you can put it on private, but I always put it on public because nobody really cares. And then we just create repository. Now the next screen here will give us some commands. Now what we're doing is pushing an existing repository from our command line. We just created our repository just now when we went git commit. That created our repository. So now we need to push it up to GitHub. So to do that, we just copy each of these commands and paste them into the terminal. So the first one is this guy. Okay. The second guy, this second one will rename our master branch main. So that's very important. There we go. So now it said master, now it says main. The last line will push our code up to our GitHub account. So we'll copy this and we'll paste it. Now this should, there it goes. Sending everything up. Boop, boop. Should just take a minute. Less. And done. So we can confirm, we can come back over here and hit reload. And here's our code. You can see our API key is open to the world, which we don't love. So maybe actually make this private now that I think about it. If you're worried about it, you can head back over here to your repositories, click on your profile, go to repositories, and then open it. And then over here in settings, we can come down here and the bottom, we can change our visibility to private if you want. I'm just going to go ahead and delete my API key. So I'm just going to leave it public because I want you guys to be able to see. But if you want to make it private, I suggest you do that because we don't want our API key open to the world, even though it's in a byte code that most people won't see. Somebody will figure it out. So definitely change that. But here's our actual code, and we're good to go. So if you guys want to see this code, head over to github.com/flatplanet, click on repositories, find the ChatGPT bot repository, click on it, and here is all the code we just spent the last couple hours working on. If you need to reference it or anything, there it is. Please don't copy and paste it. I hate when people do that. That's lazy. Write it yourself. Okay, so I think that's it. That's it for this video. That's it for this course. In the next video, I'll say a few words and we'll wrap this all up.